just like walking down the hall, like he's walking ahead, you took a selfie, he's behind you, or?
No.
So like, tell a good story here, ladies, come on.
I am not a good storyteller, but
How many times do you have to text them?
how many times what?
Ask you to take pictures?
How many times what?
Never.
Okay. So Nicole and I actually were able to participate in the Gary Keller Top Producer Mastermind, which happens after Mega Camp closes out, like when the general sessions are all done. And it was incredible. It was amazing. And we got a lot of value out of that, as well as the CEO Summit, as well as the entire event itself. But being a mastermind group with Gary Keller, and essentially everybody that you see on stage on those panels was pretty darn amazing.
And there was a photo up at the end, and as I understand it, you were the last picture that he took.
So it was actually at the beginning. He was standing, it was at the beginning before it started. He was standing at the front,
So he
and
held up the start for you.
he held up the stars. He sure did. And we were with Olivia, our new regional. And I was like, oh, I'm like, we could not understand why we were starting 30 minutes behind schedule. And then I realized, like, oh, it's because Gary's literally standing in the front of the room, and he's like talking to everybody that is in the room that just wants to come up and say hi and take pictures and whatever. And so I was like, Gary's up there. And Olivia's like, do you want a picture? And we were like, sure. So we like raced up there, and there was like one person in front of us, and Gary goes, one more picture. And then Olivia goes, two more pictures. And he goes, all right, two more pictures. And so then, he grabbed us, and we took a photo. I just regret like that I didn't go up sooner, because I really would have told him my mustache story about like wanting his mustache hair to wear it in a locket around my neck for good luck.
And we've digressed quickly. All right, here we go.
I know he has a dry sense of humor, but I think he would have thought it was hilarious.
It's a little sneak peek of Mega Camp.
Okay.
We love our reunions to grow. Guys, so much has happened this week. I've invited Charlie here. He's going to be running start to finish our meeting today with some great information about things that have happened this weekend. And I'm going to go sit down now, but I'm going to be in the back taking notes and asking questions. So if you have them, we'll call them and make sure that you get them answered. And I have a great team meeting. Enjoy.
All right, so here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Are things different?
Yes.
Okay. Functionally, yes. Or technically, yes. Functionally, no. That's how I would describe it. People have asked me many, many times my opinion. I'm like, technically, yes, there's change. We have new forms. We have new contracts. Functionally, we're going about what it is that we do. We'll have to go negotiate what our value is and how we navigate forward. Full transparency. What I totally intended to present to you today, I totally scrapped last night at 6 o'clock and rebuilt it late last night into something totally different based on the 20 conversations I had yesterday. So my mega camp recap, I'm actually going to do next week, because based on the anecdotal stories that I had of people from last week into the weekend and into today, the mega camp stuff can wait, because it's far more big picture and it's far more like where we're going. Where I thought today we needed to get into is where are we now? Okay. And so I'm just going to jump right into it. And I've been kind of on this track of lessons learned in the market of the moment. And my hypothesis of what I've actually seen and heard is insecurity right now, or anxiety of what's showing up amongst your peers is coming from a place of a lack of competency of where we're headed, right? Do I use concessions or do I use cooperative compensation? Do I do anything? What do I market? And my point to it is it's actually okay in a moment of time, and I've said this like the last several weeks, to say like, look, no one quite frankly has the right competency yet. So the pontificators you have on Twitter or TikTok or Facebook, it's all bullshit, excuse my French, until it's market tested and you develop your competency to that. Does that make sense? So just be careful what you put into your RAS, because until it's market tested and the market tells us how we're going to operate, everything else is theory. Okay. And the reason why I share that with you is this whole concept of competency builds confidence. The more competent you are at something, the more confident you are at something. And so right now, going through this last weekend, and I heard it mainly out in Waukesha County more than I heard it anywhere else, is seller concessions, concessions, concessions. Everybody in Waukesha is using concessions. Like, they don't want to sign cooperative compensation agreements. Do the brokers sign it? Do the agents sign it? Look, everybody in the industry is working through it. And there isn't the right or wrong path or avenue for it. There's multiple avenues now that we have to learn how to work through and build our competency based on the path that we have in front of us. Does that make sense? So someone shared with me a really good podcast recently around building competence and self-worth and confidence that Mel Robbins recently had. Mel's in really, really incredible forethought around it. And I just wanted to share with you a 2-minute segment of her conversation. And then we'll jump into a presentation that I call probability. So
the problem with the word confidence, when I look it up in the dictionary, it's one of my favorite definitions of a word. One of the definitions is acknowledgement and self-assurance in one's own abilities, right? Like, you're acknowledging and you are aware of and you're reassured of your own abilities and your qualities. And so when I look at that definition, I go, okay, that requires you to do things that, like, you don't build your self-respect when you sat out on the beach. But you do build your self-respect when you went and hiked up a hill and then walked back down, right? Like, your self-confidence doesn't grow because you sat out in your garden and didn't do anything. Your self-confidence grew because you learned how to garden or do something, right? Your self-respect, self-esteem, and self-confidence grow when you do things that are not obvious or easy or simple.
Right.
But like you're saying, we're not trained in that way. So what are some of the steps that people could take towards self-confidence?
Yeah. First, here's what I want to tell you, and then I'll give you some steps. So confidence is one of those topics, Jay, that we have backwards. Everybody hears the word confidence and they think it's belief, like up here.
Yeah, I agree.
Confidence, my definition of confidence that I want everyone to walk away with is confidence is the willingness to try. In research, there is something called the confidence competency loop. And what that means is that as you try something for the first time, like I was curling my hair this morning and I freaking burned my ear. And my daughter casually says, gotta learn somehow. By trying, and by the way, screwing it up and burning my ear, I still am gaining a little bit of competence. I know to hold this thing a little bit further away from my ear now. By gaining competence by burning my ear, I now am going to try again, and I'm going to be a little bit better. And I'm going to gain a little bit more competence, and then I'm going to try again, and I'm going to learn even more. And so confidence, at the heart of confidence, is action. It's the willingness to try. And all you need is to know that if you try, you're not going to die. You're just going to learn something. And when you learn something, it removes a little bit of the insecurity so that it makes it slightly easier to try again. And so I would follow the 60% rule, okay?
and that's where I feel that we are as an industry. That's where we are as an industry. Okay. I'll use a real conversation. You guys can either nod your head or give me a thumbs up on this. How many of you had conversations with people this weekend where you're like, seller concessions, or use this form, or write this on this line, and you had a disagreement because there was confusion? Right? Some people? Like, part of the competency that we'll learn, and Dawn and I are going to go through a conversation and dialogue too, is the avenues of payment, or how you receive your professional fees. There's going to be multiple avenues you can take. And right now we're at a stage where there isn't a lot of competency. And so there's a lot of insecurity and a lack of confidence. And the more familiar we get around our competency to the avenues within the transaction that are going to be unique transaction by transaction, the more competency we develop, the more confidence we get. And the more confidence we get, the faster our entire industry moves into what is the new normal. Does that make sense? And until we're in it, it's nearly impossible to say how do you build that confidence in it from the standpoint of like your self-worth, how you negotiate with your co-broke and who's right and who's wrong, right? And so I thought it was just a good little moment as a starter to team meeting today around, we just have to recognize that we're building competency in order to build our confidence as to how we're navigating the changes that we're all dealing with. Cool? All right, so shifting gears. Why did I scrap all the mega camp stuff that I pushed to next week to do a whole different presentation today? Because coming off of Mel Robbins' conversation, I think there's a really good kind of reset that we need to stay focused in, okay? And I'm gonna use a parallel example. Who remembers Y2K? Okay, and the theory in Y2K at the end of 1999 was what?
The world's
gonna
ending.
shut down.
The world's gonna shut down. All the computers are gonna start over and they won't know what it's gonna do and it's all gonna self-combust, right? Okay. It feels as if we're a little bit of moment in time in our industry, very similarly to what we were at Y2K. And I want to introduce to you the concept of probability, okay? And what probably will help it happen. And how do we identify the probability paradox? And the probability paradox states this. What is the likelihood that something is going to happen? I'm just gonna move this up here. What is the likelihood of something that's gonna happen? And how much attention does it get? And the probability paradox comes at you like this. The more attention something gets, the less likely it is to occur. The less attention something gets, the least likely it is going to occur. So let's take a look at something. We've had lawsuits. We've had artificial intelligence. We've had blockchain. We've had buyer agents that are going to go bye-bye. We've had a lot of this in our RAS in the last 12 months. It's gotten a lot of attention and a lot of headlines. Okay. And there's also a ton of things that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Business continues. Business didn't stop on October 28th when I was actually sitting right back there and my phone started blowing up right next to James Krickerberg when they announced the settlements, right? The business didn't stop because no one wants to talk about what's going on in the business. That would be boring. They wanted to talk about the hypotheticals. Because in the news media, what gets the most amount of attention is exciting, and what is the most boring gets the least amount of attention. Okay? Because you don't see things like the New York Times saying things are generally going to stay the same, right? Because headlines don't sell. A headline like this wouldn't sell. And so when you go back to understanding the probability paradox, is what's exciting gets the most amount of attention is the least likely thing that's going to occur. And the most boring thing in the world is the most likely thing that's going to occur. But no one wants to talk about what's boring. So let's take a look at data and evidence to identify the probability of what our future will look like in terms of uncertainty and change. Okay, and this is using data and evidence as to identify probabilities. Consumers will probably continue to work with real estate agents. Okay, when you look at the method of home purchases, last year was 89% of all transactions had a real estate professional within the transaction. It was the highest it's been in the last 40 years of tracking this data, and transactions are getting more complex, not less, and people are showing you they value the services you provide. Now, using a very similar method, 89% of all transactions last year, and going back to 1981, the industry's seen billions of dollars that have entered into the space to disrupt our industry. Zillow, Redfin, Opendoor, we've talked about iBuyers, you talk about the advent of artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. Yet the vast majority of consumers are using a real estate agent for the biggest transaction of their life. And last year was at its highest percentage of transactions utilize a real estate professional. And within our RAS, because we focus on things that are exciting, we freak out when the industry goes to 4.1 million transactions. And we need to start focusing on the $90 billion in definitions that are available in terms of the opportunity that's in front of us, right? And so if we don't learn how to adapt, you're eligible to be disengaged. So standing still is not an option. And here's where we introduce the last mile problem. I'm going to use a parallel quick because we like game shows here in this at this team meeting. Raise your hand if you have ever purchased an item from Amazon. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. In terms of Amazon within the business space, they use this thing called a flywheel. And in the flywheel, they look at how do they capture consumers, and then what do they need to deliver on to recapture them again so that you're caught in this virtuous cycle that you basically just continue to buy things from Amazon. Okay. Where do you think the most expensive portion of the flywheel exists within the Amazon model? Shipping. Think of it like this, that big Amazon warehouse right to the east side of 43 in your way to Chicago. Getting it from that warehouse to your home is the most expensive part of their transaction. And if you think about it, it wasn't the cost of acquisition of whatever the inventory was. It wasn't the cost of building their platform. It wasn't the cost of this, that, and the other. The last mile problem, now I'll equate it to our business, is this. You all spend a ton of money, time, energy, and resources on marketing and leads, do you not? Okay, you spend a ton of money on technology and CRM platforms, right? You spend a ton, some people spend a lot of money on AI and predictive analytics to score leads. And yet, there still has to be a relationship. Our issue in our industry, our last mile paradigm, is the relationship. You can have 20,000 leads in your database. You can have every piece of contact information, but unless you have a relationship with someone where they raise their hand, or you make the phone call, or you follow up with a text, or you send them something, unless you have that relationship with the client to say, yes, I want to work with you, and they're my largest financial transaction, all the other money you spend on it doesn't matter. You can't spend the amount of money in the world to replace yourself from a relationship. Okay, our last mile problem in our industry is the relationship. So in a period where we are so worried about justifying fees, let's take a look at opportunity. There was a company Inman worked with, they did secret shopper insights. Okay, they had 1,000 shoppers who went out. They split it up between online and open houses across 30 states, looking at 100 different brands, 100 different brokerage brands to get a cross section of different agents. And they housed this, their theory on the front side was the last mile problem. So here was the insights to their data. 35% of leads were never responded to. 47% of requests were not responded by a human. So it was a chatbot. 8 hours and 17 minutes was the average time for a human to respond to one of the leads. 42% of agents never asked for contact information. That's the equivalent of saying 42% of the time, I'm not going to do my job to sell your home. 62% of people experienced no follow-up at all. Okay. And so here's one weird trick to grow your business in a moment of uncertainty and change. And it's called the last mile opportunity that we have within our business. One, if someone calls, call them back. If two, someone texts you or emails them, write them back. 3, build meaningful relationships, or you will be disrupted. Point blank. It's a pretty simple solution to the last mile issue. And yet the biggest issue we have as an industry is we allow the relationship to be disintermediated, right? And so the reason I bring this up is when looking at the probability paradox, our last mile opportunity within our industry is actually the thing that is the most boring that no one wants to talk about. And the thing that's the most boring that no one wants to talk about is the thing that we need to do every single day. And the competency aspect of our technical changes will get figured out the more we do activities, and the more activities we do, and the more transactions we do, the more confidence you will build in the technical changes. But you can't lose sight. And I'm seeing this right now all over social media. Everyone's talking about the changes, and they've completely lost sight of their relationships. You know what's also interesting? If you just look, and I did a little anecdotal research, I just quickly looked at the top 30 agents in the MLS, brokerage agnostic, doesn't matter who you are. Looked at Suzanne, looked at, the Roth team, looked at Justin Hoffman, looked at JJ Hausman, looked at all over. And what's interesting to me is those that understand the last mile opportunity of doing what's boring haven't changed their mechanism of marketing or communicating their value to their clients in any way. And a lot of our industry, the 80%, has been really focused on change and what's happening to them that they don't control. And so my challenge to the group this morning, after hearing some of the conversations that were had last week of like some of the industry practice changes, what happened over the weekend, people getting frustrated with their peers, is to say, get back to focusing on your relationship, because that's our last mile problem in this industry, right? Because if you get boring, you will be consistent. So what you can't control lawsuits, you can't control competitors, you can't control interest rates, you can't control a seller who decides to come out at a 0% compensation to see what the market would bear. What you can control is your follow-up. You can do a great job. You can build your relationships. You can build your fiduciary. You can build your competency as the avenues and how you're going to negotiate transactions moving forward. And the more we focus on this, the more successful you will become. Point blank, straight up. That's the truth. We'll help you with the competency. We're going to help you get to the finish line from a fiduciary standpoint and what your competency is in order for you to get what you're worth. And so focus on being really boring and focus on your last mile problem, which is AKA your relationships, and you will be fine long term. Make sense? Cool. I wanted to start with that because I thought, just based on where the energy of the group I was getting, of conversations I was having with people in the industry, I thought it was a good moment of time to just say, hold on, we got to reset here for, and let's just get back to doing what we're doing, and we'll help you navigate the competency aspect of it. Make sense? Cool. So, perfect transition and segue. Fender Dawn. Can we talk a little bit about competency and how these guys get paid? Cool. So while you're coming up, I will tell you, I will say this is a little upfront before I turn it over to Dawn. I heard this a lot yesterday. Agent X is telling me this, Agent Y is wrong, firm this is right, firm Y is wrong. Look, there's no right or wrong. There's roughly about 4 pathways that you will have to learn how to navigate. And here's what you also have to understand about the landscape that we're in right now in Milwaukee, okay? Every firm's risk tolerance is different based on where they sit based on the outcomes of what's going on in a legal environment status. What I mean by that is not every firm settled. So they have legal advice that they are giving their agents that they have to operate in certain ways because of decisions that they made not to do. You're in a position it's an a la carte decision. We're not telling you what to do. We're giving you your options to best helping you navigate your clients. The reason why I share that with you, and the reason why it's most important here, is because I'm hearing it most in Waukesha County than I am on the east side. Is Waukesha County, it's like concessions this and cooperative compensation that, and my firm is right and your firm is wrong. No, it's what did you work with on your seller, and what pathway do we have as a buyer's agent in each transaction that's going to be unique, and then how do we navigate based on what the rules that we have to play by in order to get this to a successful close. Does that make sense? So there's no right way to do this, there's no wrong way to do this. It's each transaction will have a unique set of circumstances that you will have to learn how to navigate. Our job today is to help you understand what those circumstances are, and then your pathways forward as to how to successfully navigate that. Make sense? Questions up front? Good stage setting? All right, perfect. Dawn, I'm turning it over to you.
Well, and I will say too, I had a call this morning from an agent on the compliance line, and and at the end of the call, they apologized for calling to check something, don't this is like, that's why we're there. If you have questions, if you're not sure, like, hey, this is the scenario, just don't feel bad confirming things. We'd rather make sure that everybody's on the right track, that you're gonna make sure that you're getting paid, that, things are done correctly. No worries about calling if you have questions. So buyer's agents, this has been a big question from agents who are calling. So buyer agency agreement, number one. So if you have a buyer agent, you have a buyer agency agreement with your client. The buyer always owes the commission in a buyer agency. So you've negotiated that with your client. Let's say you negotiated 2.5%. Your buyer is agreeing to pay that amount. If something else is covered by the seller or the co-broke, that's going to be offset. But ultimately, your client is responsible for that amount. So just making sure that that's clear for everybody. If the seller agrees in the offer to purchase, in those concession lines that that the concession will be used for paying the buyer's agent, that's one way that buyer's agents are getting paid. And then otherwise, if there's a co-broke compensation agreement. So we're all on the same page. Those are kind of the options for getting paid as a buyer's agent. Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So methods for paying out from listing firms and sellers. So option one is the seller agrees and approves of that offer of compensation. So that's the traditional method. That's how it's been traditionally. Someone offers 5% total commission. It's split between the listing firm and the buyer's firm. That's how it was traditionally. So that's option one. Option two is that the seller via the offer to purchase agrees to pay the buyer's firm. And then option three is that the seller is offering concessions to the buyer in which the buyer chooses how to apply that, and they still owe the commission. So if they want to apply that concession towards the commission for their buyer's agent, they can. Yes? Okay, you guys are experts. So little reminder of the difference between concessions and compensation. So remember, concessions you can advertise in MLS. You cannot advertise the amount in MLS. No language about amounts anywhere. The seller may not condition those concessions for compensation use. So you guys remember this, we can't say concessions to be used towards paying your buyer agent commission. Concessions are for the buyer to decide what they want to do with. And then just know that could interfere with the additional negotiations. I know that's been a concern for agents for how will this play out. That compensation, on the other hand, is money that's earmarked for the firm. Again, it may not be it's not advertised in MLS that you're offering it, and the amount's not advertised, but you can advertise that elsewhere. You can't advertise in anything tied to MLS. So we've had some questions about aligned or showing time. Can you put it in there? Do not put it in there. So it can go in other things, reverse prospecting, anything tied to MLS, don't chance advertising it there. The pro of compensation is that there's no confusion about where that money is going. And then remember, we have this awesome flow chart that Kathleen made for us. So we've got, and there were copies of this in the back. We've got copies of it downstairs. Basically that, how do people get paid? And I would say, so you've got all of these options here. The biggest thing is having that conversation with the listing agents about what's their preference? Are they going to send you that co-broke compensation agreement that's in the flow chart going down option on the left side? Or would they prefer that show up in the listing contract? There's not a right or wrong. Somebody called this morning and said 2 people wrote it in the offer and we don't have the co-broke compensation. One person they had sent the co-broke compensation agreement to, it wasn't in the offer. Either way is valid.
So that is okay because I had a listing where the agent didn't put it in the offer, but then just sent the co-broke.
Yep.
And vice versa. If I'm a buyer agent, I put it in the offer, it gets accepted without co-broke.
Correct. So any of these options are valid. So it's just communicating. Does the listing agent have a preference?
Yep.
And just being clear about that. Any other questions about that? Those options? You guys have seen the flow chart. Yeah, Amy.
So if you are looking to select concessions,
Mhm.
and you've got a offer
Mhm.
that has it in the
Mhm.
concession,
Mhm.
not a concession,
Mhm.
is that valid?
That's valid. Yes. So the buyer can choose how they want to apply that concession. And if they want to apply it towards their buyer agent compensation, that's valid, so they can use that. Either in lines, the offer to purchase lines, 543, it's on the right side of the flow chart. Or they can put it in the UR identify.
That's, I didn't say. So as a buyer's agent,
Mhm.
let's say, the listing is offering concessions and I wanted to pay commissions.
Mhm.
Then can I send them agreement,
So you wouldn't, in that instance, so you'd be on the right side of the flow chart. So seller agrees to pay buyer concessions.
okay, so I can change that. Basically what I'm saying.
If you change it from concessions to compensation.
Oh, the buyer can't in the offer to purchase. So you're not sending that co-broke compensation agreement.
Okay, but it's still concessions, it's not.
The buyer is choosing to apply it towards commission, so they can put it in the offer to purchase.
So this is a conversation we were having as well.
Yes.
And so one of the things that our team is talking about is it's really asking really good questions to the
Yes.
listing agent. Hey, I see that your seller is offering concessions.
Yes.
Are they open to us requesting compensation
Yes.
in lieu of concession? So I don't think there's any limitation to how you can structure it in your offer. I think it's just more asking the listing agent, what is their seller's intentions? What is their seller comfortable with? And then trying to craft your offer so that it aligns with that. And that's just kind of like what we're doing moving forward is
Correct.
asking a lot of
Communication. Communication is the big thing right now, especially as we're all navigating this together.
questions. Yeah.
Just communicating how to.
Because I understand what you're saying is if the listing says we're offering concessions.
Yes.
But you don't want to ask for concessions, you want to ask for cooperative compensation. Can you do that? My understanding is you certainly can.
Yes.
You just may want to have that conversation first.
Yes.
You're not creating friction in
Yes.
what the seller's looking for and what you want. It has the same impact on the net
Yes.
proceeds, so it really
Well, it's gonna
shouldn't.
impact finance, so.
True, yeah.
That that is, like, the reason that the commission is involved is their.
But if you're putting $10,000 of concessions in as concessions, that will need to be approved. I think.
Yes.
If you're saying my 10,000 concession, if your buyer wants that 10,000 of concessions to be applied to commission, then no, that's not going there.
And then you would check that line 543 on the offer to purchase, saying that it's being used towards commissions. We can talk through it more, Amy, too.
Yeah.
Did you had a question?
I just had a question, so.
Yeah.
When you have a compensation agreement,
Yes,
the amount is in the compensation.
correct.
Someone's offering concessions,
Yes.
pulls them to that amount that they're telling you that they're giving. Because we have an agreement on a compensation concession, so they send you a text and says, we're offering 6,000. Is that legally binding?
It's
So
just
that's-
like anything else. It's whatever's written in the offer.
I know,
So I
that's what
can,
I'm- so we don't
Yes.
have anything with,
correct,
so what, other than saying yes, it really doesn't mean anything.
correct.
And one more follow-up
Yes.
question, just because. This morning, the
Yeah.
compensation agreement.
Yep.
I sent someone a compensation agreement. I did not fill in their name or their brokerage
Correct.
place because I wanted it open.
So
I got
they
it.
would fill it in.
I got
Yep.
it sent back. Shore West will not accept it that way. They want it to be filled out.
Okay.
So if I have 10 Shore West showings, can I just say, I will send a compensation agreement out if you tell me you're writing an offer?
That's a fair thing. Yeah. And again, it's just that communicating.
Right. I'm
So
just-
as we're navigating how
Because
other.
I just got that back.
Yeah.
I just want to give clarity on something else
Yeah.
too, because this has come up recently. Cooperative compensation agreements. We have been given the legal opinion, agents can sign them and execute them. Other firms in town have taken a different stance.
Yep.
We view the cooperative compensation document no different than a listing document. You are representing the brokerage, you can enter into this agreement on behalf of the brokerage. That is the stance that we're taking.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my job is to make
Make
your
it as easy
job
as possible.
a hell of a lot easier. Yeah, say that one more time. Agents can execute the cooperative compensation agreements between firms. Some firms in town are making it where they want the broker to sign off on all of them. Our legal team looked at it and said, your listing agents can enter into an agreement So they can enter into an agreement of cooperative compensation. That makes sense.
When the WRA was at our office, they said each brokerage is able to decide. So from the WRA directly, they said that we're fine with that as well.
Here's the thing, I don't want to get in the way of your timing and your ability to get a deal done. So we feel want to sign every document. If that were the case, we would crash print all the broker signatures on it. You would have it already.
What if the listing agent won't sign one? Says just to put it in the
Then that's fine. Yep, just put an offer to purchase.
offer.
As long
I
as
have a
it's
feeling
clear.
we're gonna experience a lot of that.
Yep.
Of just either agents or firm readings, like maybe smaller brokers as well, just not familiar with it or just not wanting to do it. Say, we don't do that, we're not gonna sign that, just put it in the offer. You know.
Which is fine. That was the whole reason why we gave the flow chart. To say, here's my professional opinion though. The cooperative compensation agreement is the most black and white direct way of an insurance policy to ensure that you're gonna get paid what you believe your value is to be. And it's the direct line from broker to broker to say how money will flow. That, we're not telling you what you should do. I'm just, if people have asked my opinion, I'm like, look, that is the cleanest way to do that. Both sides agree that that's the pathway they want to take.
I was thinking that, so that broker to broker agreement should be signed by, let's say, if I'm a buyer agent, should be signed by the listing agent before I write my offer, right? It doesn't go with the offer. If they decide not to sign, I was an offer with
It's kind of wonky. The listing agent has to send it to you first.
So it started with the listing agent because then they know how much they're offering for co-broke compensation.
Well, question,
Most listing agents this weekend had a crash point ready to go.
if we're communicating with the listing agent, are you offering a buyer agent compensation? Yes, we are. Great. What is the amount? Is it stated in the listing agreement? Yes. 0.4%. Perfect. There's nothing to stop us from then having our admins or ops team or whoever send that to that listing agent through DocuSign to click and sign to make their life easier and to ensure that we're getting it done versus can you please send me the form, and now we're relying on their ability to get going.
Yeah,
As long as it's signed by all parties.
you're not wrong.
Okay.
And this is like, we're navigating the gray area to figure out how to make efficiencies to process.
Right. But that's what, like, we're just looking at, how can we make this so stupidly simple
Turnkey.
for every other, and not even for us, like, we're the ones in the room who are getting the education. I'm more concerned about the 90% of agents who are not, that we're gonna have to really be leading by example and almost educating as we go and doing a little bit of their job for them.
Yeah.
And how can we implement systems and processes to do that? So it's seamless, and like, let's just focus on the client and get this done.
James?
Tony, I think a good listing agent in this market has that ready to go for higher agent, right?
Which is why I want to do deals with you, yes.
Broke 2.4%. If you have interest, tell me right away. I'll fire it off immediately.
Yeah.
Sign it, send it back with your offer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works.
You know, I have that for new listing. It started today, so if anybody wants to write it, I will send it right now.
I actually brought a staff.
On the buyer side, like I'm gonna request it. I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
hey, you're co-broke. If they say yes, all right, I'm the right offer. Please send me the comp agreement. I have one this weekend, came right away.
Yeah.
So if they don't send it, I'm just putting in the offer.
Just put in
and
the
that-
offer.
That's the end of it.
Either way, it's as long as it's clear.
At least it's the offer.
Alex?
Option A there, if you do have the sign and you're writing an offer, you're not putting it in the offer.
Correct.
again, are you putting it as an attachment?
I would attach it as a separate document. It's not part of your offer to purchase. It's not between clients. I would
Right.
make sure that it's
But
delivered
it's
back.
all together.
Yes, in one email, but not the same
Would you
email.
check it as an additional document?
No.
Okay.
And but the two firms are not a party to the offer.
Correct.
So we don't want to attach.
Yep.
The co-broke compensation
Yep.
agreement to the offer, but please deliver it.
Yes. Yes, make it clear. Any other questions about this? These are good questions.
I know one of my agents has repeatedly asked the question. When you're the listing agent, why would you offer concessions?
Why would you-
Try to explain.
Why would you offer concessions versus compensation? Perhaps, so here's a couple, I've done both.
Okay, you wanna know
Yeah.
the real truth to that?
Please.
Please.
What I alluded to on the front side.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what's actually going on in the background. If you haven't been paying attention to this, which is why we've danced around some of these topics, the
Mhm.
Department of Justice is still looking into everything that how our industry operates. Some firms who didn't create a settlement where there was clear language as to how firms can operate
Mhm.
are very much still in the crosshairs of the Department of Justice. The number one thing they're looking at is how compensation is being offered and communicated. Some firms have taken the choice, because of their risk liability with the Department of Justice inquiry, that they are informing their agents they must go down the path of concessions because they think it is the least viable option. Now, the other side to that coin is, in our environment, compensation is not illegal. You cannot, also, by the way, you can't work for free. It's a state statute. Which is why if you do a transaction, you at least have to charge $1 if you ever do anything for free. Okay? Our stance is compensation is not illegal. We feel very comfortable with the rules of engagement that have been set forth. We are going to continue with the rules of engagement until they set forth, until they change that is required of us to change. Other firms have to play a bit more defensive approach, which is why they're choosing concessions. Does that make sense?
Fair enough.
I just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off.
That's
like,
perfect.
What I wanted to say, but I have to dance around a little bit.
Yeah, in the back, yeah. Yes.
So, our, we represent both sides.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
So what a lot of, okay, so in this scenario, you have the listing as well. What some agents are starting to do is writing in additional provisions that if the listing agent writes an offer that successfully closes, total commission can be blank. So put that up front right away so that your seller client knows that if you write something up for someone as a customer, you're still representing your client, the seller. But if someone approaches you and asks you to write an offer, here's the fee for both, just to make sure that you're. No, agreed, agreed. Yes. Correct. And if you can't, if you're not offering co-broke compensation, then you can't be paid as with the buyer customer, so it's good. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
So you said if we're not offering co-broke compensation,
Mhm.
we write in provisions on our listing contracts and we state, okay, we're not offering co-broke compensation.
Mhm.
We are agreeing to sell side at 4.5%. If I put language and say, if I bring a buyer as a customer, I will earn an additional 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Those are terms that we're working with that our clients in this scenario where we do bring buyers a customer.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we're not offering growth to other agents,
Mm-hmm.
we can still negotiate.
You
that
can
offer.
still,
We'll
yes.
just work it out in the purchase.
Yes,
But we're basically agreeing on those terms. If I do bring a buyer customer,
yes,
I earn another 2.5.
Correct.
Total of 7.
correct.
It wouldn't work out. It would be my listing, but that's for buyer customer. So
Yes,
you kind of, I wanted to make sure because you said we don't offer a co-broke, we can't charge a buyer customer. We can't take unless I've been writing it in on my listing contract.
yes, yep, in your listing contract,
Make it
yep.
very clear.
Make it, is
Even
what,
when it was before, when the co-broke was 2.5, I still would write it in. If I bring a buyer customer, just to be clear, I'm
Mhm.
also getting that.
Mhm. Yep, clarity is the biggest thing, just having
The
that
reason that's
conversation.
okay is because
Correct, yes,
didn't have it, that's.
correct.
And I would bring up because I don't think
It's
offensive. It's not the residential lines.
correct.
I think more buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody needs.
Yes. Yeah. Tony.
So you made a good point though, that is, if you are a listing agent
Mhm.
and you bring a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a conversation today at our team meeting where we were talking about the different pre-agency, disclosure to customer, buyer agency, right?
Yes,
So
yes, I know where you're going with this.
hypothetical,
Yes,
I show a property with a free agency.
yes,
They want to write an offer.
yes,
They don't want to sign a buyer agency.
Mhm.
They sign a disclosure to customer.
yes.
How and where can I negotiate compensation? Because it doesn't give me that option.
Unless there's a co-broke compensation agreement. You cannot. You cannot put your interests as, you cannot, if you are a sub-agent of the seller,
Mhm.
you cannot put your interests ahead of the seller's interest. So you cannot ask for concessions to be used towards
So
your
hypothetically, right, listing, is live and they're not offering cooperative compensation to co-brokes or to buyer firms, okay? Realtor.com lead wants to go see the property, get the pre-showing or pre-agency showing. They want to write an offer, but they're not comfortable signing a buyer agency agreement. They want us to write the offer. There is no compensation.
Gotta have the clause in your listing contract.
No, I'm not.
It's
I'm
not his
listing
listing.
agent.
So what I, and the.
See what I'm saying? Like there's gonna be these
So-
unique situations.
Yes.
I'm
Wait, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Why, what's the hurdle of signing buyer agency if they want to write an offer to purchase?
No hurdle for me, obviously, but there are some.
Hypothetically.
There are some buyers
So-
that are not comfortable with a buyer agency agreement. They I just want you to write the offer.
With-
Again, it's a small percentage. But it was, as we were walking through, we were just thinking of hypothetically.
Yeah.
That may be a scenario where you could be drafting an
Yes.
offer, just be aware.
Yeah.
That could be a scenario
But
where
you
you're
can't,
drafting an
you can't work for
offer.
free though.
That's where,
So-
right,
Hold on, real quick, time out.
Yeah.
Here's where I think this is gonna go.
Yeah.
Buyers in that scenario, which I think is somewhat niche.
Yeah.
Will get more comfortable understanding. Buyer agency, rules of engagement around buyer agency have changed. And that, again, here's a really important point that I don't think enough people talk about. Wisconsin is an at-will state. You were only in this agreement with me under buyer agency at your own will. At any time you decide to cancel the contract, is it at your will?
Yeah,
Yes,
and that's the thing
that's
too,
the-
right?
yeah,
One for one
'cause a lot of
property.
people
of
wanna get
course.
signed
Yep.
into somebody, if you
Yep.
get to a property specific, that's an easier
Yeah.
sell.
But I'm just saying, right?
But you're saying, Joyce, something.
Here's the thing, I understand all that, but the question is, how do you use the screwdriver? And the answer is get better at hammering nails.
Yes.
I understand that. At the same time, probably at least confirm, is that accurate? Is there any effort being made to enable someone to be paid if they are, if the seller and the listing brokerage are not offering cooperative compensation and you are drafting an offer as a sub agent, how do you determine your compensation if none is being offered, or can you? It's a weird.
It's a really weird,
You know what?
it's-
Let's do this. Let us ask Peter.
Yeah,
our
yeah.
attorney.
Yeah, that'd be, I'm just curious,
It's a good question.
knowing our luck, shit's gonna happen at some point or another. We're gonna be like,
Yep.
Charlie, why would putting commission in an offer be any different than writing under asking? Buyer tells you, I wanna write 20,000 below, ask. Buyer's telling you.
correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot put the commission in the offer to purchase if it's not a client,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So like, you can't put it in that checkbox, but
What
can
about
you?
the additional provisions?
Yes.
Maybe.
You can't because you're putting your interest ahead of the seller.
And so is
Yeah.
writing under asking, like if the buyer's telling
That's
you
true.
to do it.
But you're, because you're doing what's the best interest of your buyer, which is agency.
But not
But you don't
necessarily the
have
seller wants to put a deal together, it could be that's. The WRS is pretty clear on it. It's-
Yeah.
you can't do it.
You know how I would handle this? I'm sorry, I can't help you. Call someone else.
Yeah.
That's it.
You choose your clients.
your clients.
Yeah.
I could get a hold of the listing agent, say, this is where I stand, I have a buyer, he just wanna have a buyer agency.
Would you be willing to
You
amend
know,
your
can you
list?
talk to your seller about possibly amending your thing to offer? compensation?
Yeah. It's, yeah.
Work it from both.
Sorry, Maria.
The thing about, yeah, well, is that true? Like, why do we have a term on the buyer? I never heard that. I'm just asking.
The client, from a brokerage standpoint, if the client notifies us in writing that they would like to be released, there's nothing legally we can do to bind them to that contract. That is what I mean by at will. Now, yeah, I don't want to open a whole can of worms on that whole topic, but that's here's the other thing. Okay, real quick on a, we have one other side that you gotta be thinking through that I don't think agents are. There's going to be a clear delineation between free agency, buyer agency. And here's what you have to understand. if you have pre-agency and show a home.
Yeah.
The argument that you have of procuring cause is going to go away.
Yeah.
So as an industry, we have to get out of this whole mindset of like, I have procuring cause, I have claim to that commission.
Mm-hmm.
You only have claim to the commission if you successfully close the deal. Like point blank, that's where the industry is going.
Mhm.
And so,
Really?
yeah,
I mean, that makes sense.
So perhaps best practice is to use the buyer agency contract rather
Well-
than pre-buyer.
I go home to a customer and someone else, they got a friend that's an agent, he can write it and I'm shit out of luck.
if you don't have buyer agency.
Right.
correct.
Because they don't owe you
As opposed to
anything.
before.
Yeah.
Wait, I should.
Yeah.
So that's where sometimes our industry gets a little like, I have procuring cause, I have
So
procuring
is that a
cause.
thing yet or is that coming?
It's probably,
Right,
if you,
buy it, if you offer on a house. Right, that
No, because pre-agency, they're not a client.
The agreement though. in
you can charge
procuring Cause,
or has
maybe
procuring cause, correct,
you can.
in the compensation agreement.
Compensation.
Yeah.
agreement. So wouldn't that save you?
Yes, I'm just foreshadowing where I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
Right.
association is going, and my
So you can-
foreshadow is saying.
Yep.
Procuring cause cases are gonna really be lean and mean in the future.
Because the consumer is choosing to work with somebody by signing buyer agency. If they haven't chosen to work with you, they don't know, you don't owe them any money for showing them a house.
Correct.
Like,
Can we put something in the, pre-agency that any compensation?
There's a
can
part for
put compensation in
compensation, but it specifically says compensation for showing properties, so that'd be like,
It'd be a retainer.
yeah, you have to say, seriously, let's say, this dollar amount upon successful,
Unless it's signed by
acceptance of an
agency.
offer or something like that.
All right, let's keep.
So you've got compensation agreement versus offer lines. Just to clarify, there's multiple ways to address this. Compensation agreement is, like Charlie said, black and white. There's no arguing around it. It's very clear what the funds are being used for. So that's the ideal scenario. Compensation is being offered. Everybody, the listing firm and buyer's firm execute that compensation agreement ahead of the offer being accepted. We know how people are getting paid. You can use those offer lines if compensation agreement is not executed. And then if the seller offers compensation that's lower than what the buyer and their firm have agreed to, the buyer, you may ask for the difference in the offer. Yes. So let's say someone says they're offering 2% and your buyer agency agreement says 2.5%. You can ask for the additional difference in the offer to purchase lines, for example.
Hey, Dawn,
Yes.
can you hear me? Sorry, for number 2, do you have to, it says, do you might have to amend the listing contracts? Is that only if it's a different amount than what you have in there? Like if we have 2.4 and they offer, on the offer it's 2%, like, is that when you have to amend it, or will you always have to? Okay,
Correct. Yep.
got it.
And to address the double.
The double,
Right.
yes. Yeah, so just making sure also that it's clear that if someone's offering compensation and it's written into the offer lines, just making it clear that we're not paying, if it's 2% and 2%, they're not paying 4% in buyer agent compensation. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
So if somebody writes you an offer.
Yep.
And it says, we want, you already have a compensation agreement, and then they ask for concessions, and in the concessions, they say, we want 2.4 for co-broke.
Mhm.
You just tell them, rewrite it.
to rewrite. You can counter it, yeah, just making sure that it's
Just
clear,
something makes it-
seller's not paying
You don't want to get in a
twice.
scenario where a seller's paying 10.
Unless they're paying.
Yes,
Right.
Document, compensation agreement.
yes,
So if you have a listing and the seller's going to provide a 2.4, that can't be uploaded as additional.
correct, Cannot be an MLS, correct.
Stay away from that.
correct.
I'm just trying to alleviate setting them out.
No MLS, you're sending them out.
$1,000 the first instance.
Yeah.
Remember that $1,000.
What's the second?
I don't know.
TBD.
The first one. I've
TBD.
never heard the second.
I don't wanna know.
So just to, I want to be respectful of everybody's time too. I know we're coming close to 1 o'clock. So just make sure that you're asking the listing agent for their preference. Are you using the compensation agreement? Are you writing into the offer? Does the total amount communicated from the listing agent match what's in the buyer agency agreement, or are we making an amendment? Or is the buyer going to be bringing additional funds? And remember that it could be the case that the seller's not open to providing concessions or compensation. So it's going to go back to your buyer, just making sure that that's clear to your buyer that they're responsible for that amount. Listing agents, do we need to amend the listing contract to make sure that everything is clear and matching? And making sure making sure that you are supplying your agency agreements to title companies, and being hyper vigilant when you're checking your closing statements. Make sure that your commission is on there. Ask for a copy of that. When John was here last week talking about lending side of, last week, lending side of things as well, they also want a copy if they want to know if the buyer is paying for that out of pocket, because they have to verify those funds. So just be open, be clear, let the title company know what the situation is, let the lender know what the situation is, check your closing statements. Good. There's the compensation agreement. Making sure that you've got standard of performance listed on lines 23 and 24. That is in the templates. Yep, so best practices, we talked about this one already as well. Have that pre-filled compensation agreement ready to go. And then remember that you have the authority to sign those. Yes? Okay. Compensation disclosure. This is our holdover with the forms changing. Remember when we had that addendum, that commission transparency addendum between the times of changing? This is just like that. So your opportunities will get kicked back if you have it on the old forms and you don't have that uploaded. So just make sure you upload it. Just letting your clients know that this is just to update this form because we had some changes in the contracts. It's not changing what you've already agreed to, but just explaining the differences between the two forms to them.
That transparency agreement, we don't need that.
Correct. No, you don't. You just need the disclosure form. This is for things that are on the old contracts. If it's on the new contract, you don't need it. And then the last thing I want to, did you want to talk about this? Okay. Yep.
Perfect. So,
yes.
So real quick, because some people caught off guard. The mailings are coming back out again. Okay, because additional people have said it. Their clients are going to be notified. This is what I got in the mail last week. I specifically pulled the one for Keller Williams. I got one last week that was like Remax, Compass, EXP. None of it named Keller Williams, but you're going to get it. It's part of the class action lawsuits that led to the changes that we're seeing within the industry. As clients reach out. That's really all you really have to say on that.
Okay.
Last thing, one more.
Oh yeah.
There will be a document forthcoming that will be an addendum to our independent contractor agreement, is what we're calling the acknowledgement of an agreement to practice changes. This is basically super simple. Hey, look, I know I can't offer cooperative compensation on the MLS. Hey, look, like all these things with the industry changed. All you simply are going to do is initial and sign a variety of things. It does not pass any risk to you. It doesn't change your independent contractor status with us. It is simply best practice within the industry to make sure that associates are frankly aware of the technical changes that are happening in our industry, and that'll be forthcoming later this week.
As Tony said, you guys are in this room, not everybody else is. So just making sure that everybody knows what's happening.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I just got an email, like Shore West person. They filled in the stuff and they read an offer. I have to have that thing initialed by my broker where the lines are that they filled in their name and stuff. Who would that be here?
It would be Sarah. Are they gonna?
Is she gonna be able to get back to me that quick to have an offer to purchase?
Just send it to us so we can look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hypothetical, but she just sent me a thing that they're now asking for you guys, for the manager to initial.
Pretty good.
She's quick. But she is. You just send her a DocuSign and yeah, she's quick. But we want to make sure that we're not doing that for every, but we'll see. The last thing I have compliance wise is just a heads up for everybody. MLS I think because they're looking really closely at every document that we have and making sure that, you know, nobody is advertising concessions, commissions, anything in MLS. They're also really coming down on branded documents in MLS. So in the documents section, if you have any branding on, if you have an offer instructions, if you have seller updates, MLS is asking us not to have any branding at all, no KW, no your logo, nothing that indicates yourself. They are, just take off that and leave the rest of the things. Personal branding. Yes.
Seller updates, that's
Yes,
it.
that's it. They
So
do not
who-
want
What
any.
should be on the seller update?
Just for the seller, white page with your bullets.
Yep. They would like to remain neutral. They don't want this to be a way for agents to advertise themselves. So just make sure that you check your documents. If you have something adjusted so that you're
So
removing
if
your
the buyer's
branding.
name would have, the seller's name would have to be on it.
No.
No,
It's not branding.
just branding.
What about
Hold
just
that.
our branding or any
Yes.
branding?
Your
KW branding, your branding. Yep. They are sending out fines for those. It's not $1,000, but it is $10. And so that adds up. So just, it's less, but still please per page. Yeah. And they are increasing fines as it's repeat. So, yeah. Cool. I'll let you finish up.
Thanks a lot.
Real quick, I just want to give, real quick, we will wrap up in the next 3 minutes. First of all, we owe Dawn, Dawn, Sarah Papp, and Wooten a big hand because they've done a ton of legwork. The amount of phone calls they've fielded on all of this stuff and helping people navigate it and working with the amount of emails we've been on with our legal counsel and all this stuff has been insane. So on behalf of myself, Diana, and the rest of the leadership team, like Wooten, Papp, and Defender Dawn, thank you. All right, a couple real quick things from a training and education standpoint. We're going to continue the 8:30 a.m. calls for those that are participating. You know what's really interesting? Yesterday, there were 86 people on the call. We started with 60, went to 70, now it's gone to 86, which tells me people want to hear what their peers are experiencing over the weekend, throughout the week, what's going on, anecdotal stories. Jeremy Reinders and Catherine Eaglehoff were on it on Monday. Really simple, easy dialogue. We're going to continue them for as long as people want to show up. You know what else is really interesting about the 86 people? Almost to a T, the 86 people represented our top 20% agents, which is awesome because it means our top people are engaged. What's concerning to me is the 80% that aren't paying attention. Again, nothing's mandatory, but we're going to continue the conversations for the foreseeable future. 2, Jeff Nevin's been really gracious in doing objection handling and role play on Mondays and Thursdays via Zoom. If you want to understand how to overcome objections and things, jump on with Jeff. Kinetic Wealth and Budget Mastermind is this week, Wednesday from 1 to 3. Tina, anything else? Scott and Tina will be collaborating. Beautiful. Exactly what to say. Next week, Wednesday, the 28th at noon with Phil Jones, demonstrate your value and get paid what you're worth in terms of how you communicate it. And lastly, everything you need is updated on the KW Realty MKE website in the Agent Hub. All the Mega Camp resources uploaded. Every team meeting doc you would ever need uploaded. Everything you need is in one place. If you need a one-stop shop for resources, it's all there. And just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that it's all updated. Any go?
No, on 18th. And Friday.
Saturday, November 23rd. All right, a bit of an extended team meeting. Apologies for the time, but we wanted to make sure that we got you guys the answer, Mr. Crickberg.
If you were listening to the radio last night as expected, Greenfield Realty has come up. Radio ads started. Buyer compensation. I thought they would. And Angela and her new brand is best regarding buyer compensation. So it would be.
Yeah, you know what my response to that would be? No one gets frickin' paid without a buyer. Don't forget it. Sellers don't sell without a buyer. You need a buyer in the transaction.
And coming soon, I have 2 condos, one bilateral.
And by the way,
Informational meetings.
Yeah, happy to help.
Answered a lot of questions.